Hey, this is the other On Cinema podcast in which myself, Ramsey, an On Cinema freak, as Greg Turkington would say, watches On Cinema with someone who has never seen On Cinema, which is my co-host, Caleb. Caleb, how are you doing today?
I'm doing quite well. How are you, co-host or main host, Ramsey?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. We had a good hang this weekend during our friend's birthday.
Yes, we did.
It was a fun time. So we're going to be covering season 1 of On Cinema at the Cinema. Last week we did the podcast. Before we got into that, though, I kind of wanted to go over our relationship to comedy. I realized we didn't really explain that in the last episode, and I think that would be like an interesting conversation to have. So kind of first things I wanted to ask you about is one, like, what do you find funny in comedy? What do you find compelling about certain comedies, and what are your favorite pieces of comedy?
There's a million different things that I find funny in comedy. And I was looking back and realized that the impetus for anything I found funny could be traced back to watching Almost Live in the 90s growing up. I don't know if you're familiar with...
I'm not. What is that? Almost Live?
So Almost Live was a mostly pre-taped sketch comedy show, local. It was a bunch of Seattle writers, comedians, and film people, and Pat Cashman, who's like just like essentially like a radio guy and a voice actor. So it was just like this huge group of just kind of just random people in Seattle just doing their best to make a sketch comedy show like every week. And we would tape the episodes, and then through the week I would just replay them until they melted. And so I realized that is where my like love of comedy started, which was weird to reflect on. And then also that led to me absolutely despising Saturday Night Live because it seemed so trash in comparison. But nowadays, looking...
So how old were you when you were watching this? I didn't grow up in the Seattle area, so I'm not familiar with this.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if you would be. It is... I was watching this. It's the show started in like the late 80s, most likely as a kind of inspired by Saturday Night Live. But I was watching this, basically ever since we got television. That was when or since we got cable. That was when I was like 3 years old. So when I was 3 years old, that's when I started watching this show. And since it's a pre-recorded show, it's they're able to get the pacing really, really tight. Whereas on something like Saturday Night Live, the sketches are live. There's a lot of dead air, jokes that don't work, and they have to scramble together to put together like an hour and a half or something. I understand now why the format I was able to enjoy a lot more of Almost Live versus Saturday Night Live. But yes, lots of local humor, lots of jokes that only really work if you know the area, and lots of like parodies of other, like whatever the famous movie is around the time. They're making like Fugitive in Seattle. I remember that was one of the sketches, and they're basically, it's just a haul of different like Seattle tropes that this character has happened to encounter and deal with. So yeah, that's like the impetus for what I found funny and continue to find funny, but obviously there's a lot more. I made like a list, and I'm trying to find like a kernel of like, everyone talks about like Schadenfreude or Schadenfreude or whatever, like laughing because something that's difficult, you can understand why it sucks to deal with, but seeing someone else deal with it as opposed to being the one having to deal with it makes it funny. Um, like that's definitely an element, but there's so much more going on that I think makes things funny, and I'm trying to pin it down. When you asked me that earlier today, and I was like listing it out to try to like figure out comedy, but could not. I just have like a list of things that I find funny.
So, what types of comedy do you find specifically compelling? Because, like, for me, there's a difference between just kind of stuff that I find purely funny versus like compelling comedy.
Could you tell me like kind of where you're coming from on that?
Yeah,
like an example.
no, totally. So for me, like stuff I find funny, you know, I love very silly, what I would call ambitiously stupid comedy. That's just fun. I wouldn't necessarily call that compelling, but for an example, like Wet Hot American Summer, the movie, there's nothing particularly super compelling or moving about that movie, but I always find joy in watching that movie just because it's just so stupid. It's absurd. I love absurdism. But compelling comedy to me is when that's sort of married with pain.
Pathos.
Yeah,
Pathos.
which is why, I mean, my favorite comedy is On Cinema. And since the format of our show, you haven't seen it, I can't talk too much about that. But I think a little microcosm of an episode of what I'm trying to explain in season 1 is just the episode where Tim breaks down crying throughout the episode, and Greg is just sitting there looking very uncomfortable. I find that endlessly entertaining. But some other examples of it, I really love Maria Bamford's stand up. I don't know if you're familiar with it. But she has very absurdist tendencies, but she talks a lot about her, intense struggles with mental illness and stuff, and like, issues with her family. And it's really, really funny. And I think there's only 2 other comedians that kind of get close to what On Cinema does for me, which is Joe Pera and Connor O'Malley.
Oh, I love Connor O'Malley.
Yeah. Joe Pera and Connor O'Malley. Joe Pera talks with you specifically, I think is a really, really great. It doesn't make me laugh out loud, but it really is just such a silly show that is very sincere and does go to some painful places. And it's the only comedy that I've ever watched that manages to be funny while also wholesome. I think that's very, very hard to do. Connor O'Malley is a completely different thing. Yeah, I love his stand-up. He does a very similar thing that Tim Heidecker does, which is kind of aping like disaffected, sort of right-leaning sorts of men, but in a very, very different way. In a way I would actually argue is more interesting. His YouTube video, The Mask, I think is like, it's fucking hilarious, but I think it's like a piece of art. His stand-up specials are nothing like I've seen before. Have you seen his video short Corey's?
I did. I mean, I watch everything Connor O'Malley does the moment before, the second it is released, because I cannot wait. And so I watched the Corys when it came out, forgot about it, and then it came up in some GIF meme online, and I was like, okay, I have to go back and watch this again. It's gorgeous, beautifully disgusting and haunting.
It's not even funny, really. Like it like he, I think, as a modern like content creator, has gotten the closest to doing anything David Lynch has done, which is a high bar. Like,
I think, have you seen Tim Robinson's latest work, The Chair Company?
yeah, I did. I'm still kind of processing the Chair Company, but that it's in a similar vein to me as that. Man, I didn't even really view the Chair Company as a comedy. Like it is, but
It is.
like reads to me much more like almost like a David Lynch sort of mystery.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like a surreal mystery. Yeah, very similar to, oddly similar to Twin Peaks, but obviously with a less, the lowest of stakes possible. uh, yeah, I think when it comes to comedy, and I I'm older now, but when I was younger, I was of the mind that comedy should mostly be separate from like pathos and like emotions. And any time that like emotions were, it felt like contrived or obligatory, and like, well, of course you need a structure, you need characters that care about things, and they need to take it seriously for the comedy to work, but it always felt like an obligation. And then um, as I've grown older now, I do appreciate, um, I do appreciate kind of having comedy that's more quote unquote compelling. Because like I think about something like Arrested Development, and it's like that's just pure, concentrated comedy, and I love that. But at the same time, I think the show that kind of started me on actually being interested in like compelling comedy was um, Documentary Now, because that show has moments that are just like, it's like kind of stops being comedy and just starts being its own like art form and its own kind of genre. And it at first I was annoyed by that, but then after, I don't know if you experience this. I think everyone does who's interested in art that like challenges them, is that you experience something that you haven't quite experienced before, you don't have the taste for it, and you're open to that kind of person, that experience, then you're like, okay, well, at least for me, I I'm like, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to go do my own thing elsewhere and then come back to this, and I'll probably appreciate it more after I've been able to sit on it. And I experienced that with Documentary Now. Some moment in one of the shows where they're like doing like chicken races or something, and it's like shot in like black and white slow motion, and it's like actually kind of beautiful and touching, like ironically. And that sort of was like the moment where I'm like, okay, I've got to open myself up to more, like more compelling quote unquote comedy. And then I think the next big thing that I kind of was able to experience that with was the show Community. Because the show Community, like when I first watched it, I watched it as it was coming out because a lot of people I was a big fan of, like Joel McHale in that show. He's actually from the show Almost Live. And so
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, so Joel McHale, Bill Nye the Science Guy, they're the two like biggest names that came from that show. And then Pat Cashman, he was the announcer on Super Smash Brothers Brawl. I'm guessing just because he lived in the area and Nintendo of America's in Redmond. Um, but but yeah, so I always was watching everything. Maybe this sounds dorky now, but I was following everything Joel McHale was doing. I was a big fan of Donald Glover, and so I basically I had to watch that show as it came out. And I remember watching it. I'm like, yeah, it's funny. It definitely has like these very, because right, I was still looking after just, is this funny? Is this funny? Like it was like I had a ticker, and I was checking like it has to meet the beats per the laughs per minute, jokes per minute of Arrested Development or 30 Rock. Um, and then after the show, either after it ended or the fourth season, I remember going back and watching it again and like laughing so much harder than I did the first time I watched it because I was able to open myself up to like, hey, like the emotional beats are actually necessary because your familiarity with these characters and understanding how they operate and seeing how that leads to these quote unquote humorous situations. It's like this is what makes it funny on like a even deeper level than you could do with just doing, jokes per minute basically. Um, and so yeah, I mean, I was crying laughing when I went back to watch Community, and that was like almost every episode. There would always be these crazy situations that only make sense when you understand the characters and where they're coming from on a deeper level. Um, Trying to think of other examples of that, but yeah, I think documentary now and then Community kind of opened me up to more of like humor that is willing to go in directions that aren't conventionally funny to either actually explore deeper emotional themes or to just then come back around and use that to be even funnier than it could be by focusing on just comedy for comedy's sake.
Yeah, right on. I got really heavy into stand-up comedy when I was about 16 years old, and I like worshipped like Patton Oswalt and David Cross and Louis C.K. and all those guys.
Me too.
Yeah. Just because it really married those things of like I didn't realize you could turn things that you were processing or painful things into comedy. As I've gotten older, I've gotten a little disenfranchised with stand-up comedy as a medium just because a lot of reasons I don't think I need to get into. I still like some of those comedians, but yeah, the Louis C.K. thing was that was an interesting moment in my life when that all happened because I was like, oh, there's all this stuff in his comedy I was not picking up on at all. That was really gross and bad.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm probably going to edit this part out, but
you should just keep buttering up Louis C.K.
yeah. No. Well, I was going to say I wanted to use an example from his early stand-up of like just the type of absurdism that I find funny is he has this whole bit where he's talking about making up like phrases of speech because he finds phrases of speech to be annoying, like the term when in Rome. So he made one up that said, when in Rome, grab the hand of a badger's dad, which I still find very funny.
That's pretty good.
I'm assuming that never led to him masturbating in front of anyone, but who knows?
Who knows? I'm sure he could figure out a way. He seemed pretty
seemed good at
pretty
it,
resilient
from what I could tell.
Yeah, pretty relentless.
Was his biggest skill was that.
Yeah, I mean, people called him a genius. Little did they know. He's a multi-hyphenate.
Yeah, he was a genius at multiple things.
Yeah, yeah.
You can be genius at comedy and making women uncomfortable.
Yeah. I mean, he's not alone there. It's a skill a lot of people have. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I'm driving the conversation.
No, this is
towards
okay.
this.
This is okay.
I think it kind of shows what at least I find darkly humorous.
No, I had a conversation with my partner about reflecting on how much I liked Louis C.K. and I kind of joked, I'm like, I think the most embarrassing thing about me now that I'm in my 30s is how much I was into Louis C.K.
I don't know. I think I mean, yeah, sure. I I was I was really into Rick and Morty when that show was coming out. So
You know what? Different thing. We don't have to get into that.
yeah,
I also was pretty into Rick and Morty the first couple of seasons, but
yeah.
I never really stayed on it.
Just list all of the problematic people that we enjoyed before we knew.
Before we knew.
Before we knew. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Joe Pera as well. I find it's interesting. There's kind of a different kinds of like kayfabe that goes into, like, for instance, Joe Pera. He's playing a character, but he's playing a character for the sake of not just raw comedy, but to explore, I guess, for lack of a better word, like wholesomeness. I guess being a part of community, genuinely caring about the place that you're in, and what's around you, and appreciating what you have. Um, there's a lot of very pure themes to his work, but to be as effective at it as he is playing this character. Um, and it's interesting that I think of someone like Norm Macdonald, and he kind of is playing a character when he's either doing a stand up or doing doing interviews, because and for him it's almost like in pursuit of comedy for comedy's sake. And I guess it's interesting to me that there's like different kinds of um, I think comedians, people in comedy that are really really talented, tend to kind of play a character at some level, like in situations that kind of sell a reality. And I think, like, yeah, for instance, like with Tim and Greg, like they are playing characters, but in these like imagined realities, as opposed to just in like a raw television program. Um, but yeah, it's interesting that there's different characters and like realities these people can play that serve um, different either emotional themes to process, or I guess different kinds of comedy that are different kinds of compelling. Because I know even with like Norm Macdonald, who's really going after the comedy, he was probably thinking kind of similar, like appreciating similar to me when I was younger, where it's like, no, get that pathos out of here. Pathos. I'm going to mispronounce that one way or another. But get that out of here. We don't need emotions here. We just need comedy. Um, I think he was kind of chasing that a bit with his comedy, but then almost accidentally coming to some amount of like compelling themes, like when he would discuss death and stuff. But he's like making these like dark jokes, and it's like that almost is its own kind of I guess sort of emotional processing in a way. And that's almost its own. It's almost like you can't escape, even if you try to be as just raw funny as possible. You can't. I mean, everyone's human. It's like you can't escape it being compelling on like an emotional level to some degree.
Yeah, totally. I kind of wanted to loop back to what you were talking about with Joe Pera playing a character, because I do think that is very interesting with him, because he is playing a character, but it's different than most comedians when they're playing like a fictional version of themselves. Because I think when a lot of comedians, for example, Tim Heidecker or Connor O'Malley, they're playing a fictional version of themselves to kind of remove themselves a little bit from reality, to analyze kind of stuff going on with them. Where when Joe Pera does it, it seems to be like he's doing it to get closer to his community. And that's what's so interesting about his comedy, is it's so focused on connections with other people, and like meaningful connections with other people. And so much comedy is really kind of hateful in a lot of ways. I don't think that's necessarily bad, but Joe Pera's comedy is the opposite of that. And he's really the only comedian I've experienced who's been able to do that in a way that's funny. You know,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think you know, I'm a huge fan of I don't hate me if you want. I am a huge fan of Nathan Fielder, and
Don't get me wrong. So the reason Caleb said that is because I've gone on many rants in our friend groups about how I think Nathan Fielder is a sociopathic monster. Don't get me wrong. His shit is hilarious. I'm a hypocrite when I say that because I've watched all of his stuff and I find it very funny. I also think that he is the devil. But anyway,
I have
that's a conversation for a different time.
Well, I do have a quote from an interview that okay. Huge fan of Nathan Fielder. Also a huge fan of Matt Johnson and Nirvana, the band, the show. And Matt Johnson does similar hidden camera kind of stunts in his work, but Matt Johnson and his crew, they try to have the people on the street that they encounter not come off as the terrible.
They don't seem to be exclusively taking advantage of people with seriously troubling mental problems, or they don't speak English as first language. Anyway,
yeah.
I'm not.
No,
I'm not
they're
gonna
not.
get to that.
They're not going out to find the most media illiterate people they possibly can to take advantage of. But yeah, Matt Johnson was talking with Joel Haver, who does sketch comedy on YouTube. They were and has made some movies, and they were talking about that kind of random people in the street being part of the show and sort of the approach. And Matt was talking about how he doesn't want people to like look bad. He wants the people that he runs into and interacts with to look sympathetic, and he wants the humor to more come from sort of how ridiculous his characters is. But Joel was like, what do you think about Nathan Fielder? I think that he does the polar opposite, makes people look absolutely terrible, takes advantage of them, and but it's from such a smart lens that it ends up still being really effective comedy and kind of genius. And Matt Johnson says, let me see. Oh, no question. It's totally forgivable. Yeah. But we're in the hands of Satan.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, like I said, I'm a fucking hypocrite because I've been criticizing Nathan Fielder's work for, I don't know, almost a decade for being exploitative, and no one ever seems to talk about how fucking exploitative his work is. But it is very compelling and very funny. Like, I consume it, so I'm not one to talk. But
yeah, like the Nathan Fielder episode when they do the rebate, like he's like a troll basically guiding them through this camping like maze of challenges to try to earn this rebate for their gas, and it just turns into them all hanging out and having a great time and sharing vulnerable moments and stories together, and kind of just everyone just kind of gets closer in this group, and it's literally all in service of just trying to get a gas rebate.
See, that's a fun episode. That's a good episode. However, there's also the whole thing where he gets that Bill Gates impersonator who is clearly not mentally well he basically helps facilitate him stalking this woman. And it's fascinating, though, because in real time on the show, you can see Nathan Fielder be like, I probably shouldn't be doing this.
Well, yeah. And then did you watch the rehearsal
I haven't watched season 2. I watched the first season. I actually found the first season to be very upsetting.
with the kid?
With the kid, yeah. The thing is, like, I was frustrated with the rehearsal because I thought the initial concept of it was really interesting. And like with the way it was formatted, everybody was kind of in on the joke more or less, but then they changed it up and he's basically emotionally abusing a child towards the end of it.
Yeah, when I watched that, I thought the show. I was like, oh, like this. I realized afterwards. I was like, well, no, that wouldn't have worked. But when the kid's like just wanting to hang out with Nathan, I'm like, yeah, he should just become become the stepdad of this child for the rest of the show. All I want is them riding roller coasters and Steal My Sunshine's playing, and he's winning the kid the big stuffed animal, and they're wrestling, they're having fun. I'm like, that would be so great. And then it's just like this sad just this sad.
So, for anyone who has not watched the rehearsal, what we're talking about, there is a sequence in the show where Nathan Fielder is simulating being like married to this woman with a kid, but the kid is a child actor. And the child actor is like 4 and thinks Nathan Fielder is his actual dad. And there's this sequence in the show where Nathan Fielder goes to this 4-year-old child's, home and has to explain to him that he's not his dad. And this kid is like having a meltdown over it because it's really fucking confusing. I found it just unethical that they aired that at all. Like, I can understand him doing that in private, to help the kid to understand what was going on. The fact that they filmed it and aired it on television, I think that is so much more unethical than any trashy reality television I've ever watched. But it's compelling because it's interesting, but it's fucked up. Like I said, Nathan Fielder is the devil. Don't fight me on this.
I'm not fighting you on that.
I'm not saying that to you.
I brought receipts for it to support that. But I still can't look away, and I have to see everything that he does. Unfortunately, I hate to admit that. Yeah, I thought that was just absolutely messed up and tragic, which makes it very, very compelling at the same time.
Yeah, it's great television.
Yeah,
we're all horrible. It's okay. Yeah, I guess we should jump into actually talking about On Cinema at this point.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, off the top, compared to the podcast going into the first season of the show, what are your thoughts?
Well, the format's not that much different. It's a little different. They're covering movies. I mean, they're not covering movies, let's be honest. They're referencing movies briefly that are coming out. Their current movies, as opposed to old movies, which they were covering in the podcast. And it's funny to watch because, the production's better. They have actual production. There's a visual component. They're on some degree of a set. They're sitting in real chairs, but the rest of everything behind them might be fully green screened. There's one episode that we talked about where Tim is sobbing uncontrollably through the entire episode, and it's never brought up or addressed the whole rest of the season. Which I don't remember anything like that happening in the podcast. Did I miss something?
No, nothing like that happened in the podcast. Something I should address real quick is there's an inherent limitation to the format of our show since Caleb hasn't watched all of the show. I can't really go too far into things that happen in the future. So I think in these first episodes, we're not going to be saying too much about the show until we get into the meat of it.
Can I be honest?
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan. Not a big fan
No,
of this season.
that's great.
I watched it as it came out when it was being released, and I remember that episode happening and being like, oh, like getting excited, like, oh man, I can't wait for this to turn into something. And I watched the first season as it was coming out. Nothing. It led to nothing at that time.
Yeah, it's a slow burn with On the Cinema, but it really does pay off. Something I will say, watching the first season, I haven't like sat down and concertedly like paid attention to it in a while, because like I'll throw on like YouTube compilation clips of On Cinema when I'm like doing housework and stuff, because that's what you do.
Oh, I'm guessing that it's kind of similar to my experience with Community, where once you see where everything goes and you understand the characters and the show a lot better, when you go back, it probably is a much more enjoyable experience.
And that's interesting that you've said that, because I've had so many people recommend Community to me, and I've tried to watch the first season so many times, and I'm just like, I don't like this.
Yeah. In that show, I mean, again, going back and watching it, it's great. But the second season is where it kind of lights up, where it comes to life, because they've spent, a year establishing these characters and figuring out the show.
Yeah. But yeah, the first thing I noted when I was watching it is that when you're listening to the podcast, it's kind of hard to tell if Tim is actually annoyed by Greg, but just immediately from the first episode, you can see Tim is visibly annoyed by Greg.
He gets more and more annoyed by him through the season too.
Yeah, it's really great because like he gets a lot more explosive and verbally abusive towards Greg as the show goes on. So it's interesting in the early season seeing Tim be more reserved.
I see a lot of myself in Greg. I hate to admit.
What do you mean by that?
I can be quite stubborn, and also, like, for instance, like the episode with Tim sobbing and Greg not addressing it at all. Sometimes that can be, I feel like I can do similar things, where it's like, yeah, I'm just enjoying my day, and someone else is really not having a good time, and I have a hard time meeting them on that level and like being vulnerable with them. And then the other thing too is like the episode when they're having their spat about Star Trek, and Greg Greg is so stubborn about being right about it. I don't think I've gone to quite the degree that he does, where he tells Tim that he should go to jail for buying a bootleg tape or whatever. I don't think I've gone to that degree, but I have certainly stuck to my guns, probably more than I should have. It definitely. I have one friend I have a few friends that it's bothered before, and so I see some of myself in like Greg looks very like comfortable, yet he is being this annoying person, like butting in, and interrupting Tim and the flow of his show. And I feel like I can kind of do the similar, where it's like I can do those things and not feel bad. I see parts of myself in Greg, both admirable and less admirable qualities. And so the fact that you're saying that Tim gets more verbally abusive to him, I feel bad for him.
Yeah. I'm interested to see how you're going to feel about Greg in the future.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it.
Again, limitation of our podcast format, but Greg will never be as awful as a person as Tim in the show, but he gets close.
Well, if bad things happen to Greg, I hope that I hope that he has done bad things so that I don't feel so bad.
Yeah, I just wanted to go over some stuff that I thought was funny. The first episode, when they're talking about the man with the iron fists, and Tim says, "It's so impressive he was able to get so much footage."
I wrote that down too.
Thought that was really great.
So he was able to film so much footage and get so many shots.
Yeah, something that's really interesting. So the first two seasons of the show, they actually have a different director who they have a different director than who ends up directing the show with them the rest of the time. And the editing style is a lot different in the first two seasons, which I like. Going forward, it has kind of a more naturalistic approach, but I noticed there was a lot of like close up shots and weird angles of both Tim and Greg's faces, like specifically the first Popcorn Classics segment when Greg brings on multiplicity and Tim is looking at the back of the box and is like has these huge bug eyes, which I thought that was so fucking funny.
Yeah.
That doesn't really happen so much later in the show. But yeah, we get the start of Tim not being able to say actors or directors' names. My favorite one is that it was directed by Bill Condom.
Also, the Man with the Iron Fist, directed by RZA.
RZA. That one's a little more reasonable. Like if you're not a Wu-Tang fan, you don't know it's the RZA.
One thing that I liked from the season was them calling Life of Pi weird with a philosophical touch.
Yeah, I made a similar note because Greg after that says, "I've seen a lot of weird movies. One of my favorites is Napoleon Dynamite." Which I found that very funny.
A lot of people they thought that movie was the weirdest movie they'd
It's
ever
so
seen.
quirky.
So quirky.
It's so indie.
I watched it a few years ago and it's like this is just really good bits.
Did you not see it when it came out?
I saw it the Saturday it came out.
Yeah, I did too. Well, because we must have been like in middle school when that movie came out.
Yes, this was for me. I was between 7th and 8th grade.
Yeah,
it came out towards the end of August because and I really wanted to see it. It looked weird, quote unquote.
No,
weird.
I mean it was a weird movie when it came out, but it was one of those movies where everybody saw it and it like became so saturated in the culture at the time where if you were just like 2 years later, if you were just like, yeah, I'm so quirky, I love Napoleon Dynamite, it just like would make your eyes roll back in your head. So I found that to be a very funny line that Greg's favorite weird movie is Napoleon Dynamite.
I mean, but yeah, I saw that movie a few years ago and it's just hilarious bit after hilarious bit, just stacked in a row with a underlying story just kind of in the background. It's like, I don't know. It is quote unquote weird, but it's pretty much just hilarious the whole time.
No, I mean, I loved it when I was younger. It was just like it got so overplayed, I guess you would say.
Yeah. Roger, what is it? Siskel and Ebert. They reviewed Eraserhead like years after it came out, and not as bad as Tim and Eric, but I think the format of their show is kind of oddly similar to not Tim and Eric, Tim and Greg. But the format of Siskel and Ebert's kind of similar to the format of On Cinema at the Cinema, where they really only have like a few minutes to talk about a movie, and so they can't like get in depth. And so when they talked about Eraserhead, not a whole lot of depth that they could get into. They're just like, yeah, what a weird movie. It just reminded me of Tim and Greg talking about Life of Pi, where all they say really is just that it's weird.
That baby made me feel gross.
Yeah, that weird lizard baby, just gross, man. Yeah. But yeah, you're talking about the editing style, and I was wondering, I mean, obviously there's editing in the sense that, like, you know, shot on Tim, shot on Greg, and then, like, they got stingers for different quote-unquote segments, but Yeah, I was curious in the beginning. I was like, are they even editing these? Like, are they cutting stuff out? Because it's
Yeah.
so dry.
Yeah, they are. So I have watched interviews with Tim where he does go into kind of how they record the seasons. Basically, they'll sit down and write out they'll have like plot points for like the seasons and certain episodes, and like certain things are pre-written, but it's all largely improvised. And they, even the modern seasons, they record them in like a weekend, basically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, all the episodes.
So there's
And
probably
then, yeah, it's very no. Tim has said, like, he has basically said that much of the quality and humor of the show comes down to the quality of the editing.
yeah. That's also very Nirvana the band as well. They'll film a lot in the course of like a few days, and then they're like, oh, we got nothing, and then they'll go through and edit it and make a show out of it and find a lot of humor there. Yeah, and I did notice. I knew that they were actually editing it when I forget the exact moment, but Greg did something that clearly made Tim break, but you only can tell that because he's laughing the next when the next shot that's on him, like not laughing, he's like smirking a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because Tim clearly breaks a lot during the show, and it's almost always Greg doing something to make him break. And I think
Yeah.
that's the only time I've caught Greg breaking is in that first season.
Oh, really?
He never breaks after that.
Wow.
But Tim breaks all the time.
Did you watch Atlanta? Sorry to get off topic, but there's one-
I've seen a few episodes here
Okay.
and there, but I've never like really sat down and
I just want to
watched the
call.
whole
I want to
thing.
call this out since I'm on a freaking podcast right now. Anyone listening? Donald Glover just 100% breaks with like a close up on his face in the middle of a scene in Atlanta. It's like season 3 or 4, I think, where they have like a fake D'Angelo, and that does this like whole speech, and it's like one long shot, and like Donald. Oh my god, dude, you're talking. Just
So
I can't. I can't.
my very flatulent
It's like Rob
elderly Boston Terrier is hanging out with us, and he has nuclear farts sometimes. In the middle of Caleb's impassioned speech about that, he let one rip. I lost a good amount of my sense of smell after the first time I got COVID, so it doesn't bother me that bad. But
Yeah, that's like my. Yeah.
do you want to start that over?
Oh, I'm just gonna. We can keep that, and if you feel it's good,
I'll keep some of it in.
But I just want to say the scene where Donald Glover comes face to face with fake old D'Angelo, and fake old D'Angelo does his rant about how we are all D'Angelo. Donald Glover just like when he has to respond to that, he just absolutely cracks the fuck up for like a split second, looks at camera, you can see him laughing, and then whoop, goes back to normal and has to like say his lines and stuff. They just left that shot in because they probably filmed that for so long, did so many setups, and that was just the best performance of either of them that they had.
Interesting.
And it's just like, I mean, that's how you end up seeing like Tim breaking stuff even in edited clips, because it's like, well, it has to make sense, and this is the best we got. But yeah, sorry, I just want to call that out because it was so weird to be watching that show, and like I'm like, they just left that shot in. It's like a serious kind of show.
No, that's interesting. Yeah. I definitely have to watch Atlanta. I've had people scream at me at the top of their lungs to watch Atlanta for the last decade. I'm gonna say I haven't watched it. I find Donald Glover's personality to be very grating, which is why I've not watched that show. But everyone tells me it's good, so maybe I should watch it.
That's canon to the show. Just that
Okay.
him being kind of shitty of a person is like part of the show.
It's not that I think Donald Glover comes across as a shitty person. He comes across to be like an annoying theater kid that I was a theater major in college. And, yeah. Anyway.
But I mean, he's probably the least. It feels weird to say because he's obviously busting ass for that show too, a big part of it. But he's probably the least like part of the show. It's everything else that really makes it.
There's
really
other factors
good.
to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we can wrap this up a little bit. I just wanted to bring up this one line from Greg because I forgot about it, and I forgot how fucking funny it was when they were talking about The Hobbit. And Greg says, Bilbo is a personal hero of mine. I laughed so fucking hard. I forgot about that. The Hobbit, just so you know, Caleb, is going to be a reoccurring thing that comes up in the show.
I'm looking forward to it because it is not a reoccurring thing for the movie The Hobbit. Not a reoccurring thing for, I think, anyone else on the planet. I think people just saw those movies and then stopped thinking about them as soon as they stepped out of the theater. So,
which I think is a little bit of the point. But yeah, I think we can wrap it up there. Yeah, just to, I think as the show, I should say, our podcast progresses, we're going to have more to say about the actual show. Like I said, I think there is a limitation to the format of this podcast with Caleb not having seen the whole thing.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Ramsey. I am curious because you've been a part of this for a lot longer and you know a lot more about like what are the fans thinking? Do the fans have a whole lot to say about season 1 of Tim?
Well, that's what's hard about it is that if you've seen the whole thing, you can go back and look at like they placed all this groundwork for the characters in which they become. But yeah, it's the first couple of seasons, it's just kind of a sort of funny parody movie review show, and if you don't have any other context, it's not that interesting.
Well, and it's crazy too, coming from like, because the thing that I saw before the thing I can remember that I saw before this show with Tim was Tim and Eric, and Tim and Eric's very broad and kind of similar to other things I was talking about. It's like joke. It's just all ridiculous and very bright, and so to come from that to like the driest fucking shit ever is such a stark.
I mean, just to
jump.
Like I said, On Cinema, I think it's one of the most interesting pieces of media ever created, and it's almost impossible to recommend to anybody because you have to stick with it through the end. I mean, just to give an example, there is a very throwaway piece of information that comes up. I can't remember, maybe season 2 or 3, that they just recently brought back up.
Hell yeah.
In the latest season.
I like that.
Like, yeah. So it's a very rewarding show. I'm obligated to fill airtime for our sponsors. I did get a sponsor.
Who's our sponsor this
Dude
week,
Wipes.
Is that like baby wipes for dudes?
So I don't know about you, Caleb, but for about a decade, I've been wanting to clean my ass. But there hasn't been a non-gay way to do it.
Yeah, bidets
but
are
now
very
we
gay.
have bidet. That's so gay.
They're the gayest.
But now we have dude wipes, and they were happy to sponsor our show because they knew that about me. So they reached out.
They say dude on the box, so I'm just, you just wipe.
If you need to wash shit off of your ass, use dude wipes. It's not gay.
Is that the catchphrase? Is that the tagline for the product? Is that on the copy that we're reading?
It's not, but it's true. And I believe it. And listeners,
I mean,
I implore you, wash your ass.
having an ass in the first place is gay enough. Why does cleaning it have to be?
Yeah. Dude wipes. Having an ass is gay. Why does cleaning it also have to be gay? Use dude wipes.
When you got movies like Tom Cruise in them, you can't lose.
When you got movies like Tom Cruise in them, you can't lose. That runs through my head every single day.
Me too.
It's really great. Yes. But yeah, thanks for listening. Just to, end out the episode. When you got movies with Tom Cruise in them.
Well, like Tom Cruise in them.
Tom Cruise in them, you can't lose. Also, dude wipes. The non-gay way to wipe your ass.
Wipe the gay away.
I'm sorry. We'll catch you next week.